The left is celebrating the departure of Tucker Carlson. I read an article in the New York Times this morning which was quoting all kinds of people in the Pentagon. This is the Biden Department of Defense. And they were like, ha, 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 ha. This guy was a prominent critic of the Ukraine war. He was bad-mouthing the military, and so we're just thrilled to see him gone. Of course, these were all leaks. These are Pentagon sources, unnamed. But I think there's no question that this jubilation is accurate. On social media, of course, you've got AOC, you've got Chuck Schumer. By the way, these are both people that called on Rupert Murdoch to get rid of Tucker. And now they're like, yeah, look, it worked. Now, I don't think that that's the reason Rupert Murdoch or the Fox people did it. But nevertheless, the left is in a good mood, even giddy about the fact no more Tucker. And then I saw an article on The Hill also this morning to the effect that there are Republicans, and I'm assuming these are the Mitt Romney types, but nevertheless, there are a couple of Republicans now, again, unnamed. They don't want to be named because they don't want to be criticized. And they're like, well, Tucker was really wrong on Ukraine. So the focus is on Ukraine. But I think their point is Tucker was off the reservation. Tucker was not playing by the rules. Tucker was raising topics that are considered taboo, in which the Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment appear to be on similar terms, or at least on the same ground. So the question is Tucker's departure from Fox really, for our side, a win or a loss? Now, I don't want to be one of these people who go, Tucker's free, Tucker can say whatever he wants, it's a big win. There are people who are acting as if this is an unmitigated victory. But no, I think it's quite obvious that Fox is an important cable channel. It's certainly got ratings that far exceed CNN or MSNBC. Tucker was the most prominent cable host in the country, and he was presenting ideas you couldn't get anywhere else. And we don't have Fox as a forum to present those ideas anymore. So that is a negative. I don't see how you can see it any other way. Debbie and I often talk about the fact that there are older guys who are not active on social media, who aren't, following my podcast on Rumble. They might be fans of mine, but by and large, their way of consuming news is leaving the Fox News channel on for much, if not all of the day. And these are the guys who get, or used to get, Tucker. So now, are they going to pivot and look for One America News or Newsmax? Or are they going to start foraging social media? Perhaps, but perhaps not. And so that's the downside. Now, here is a potential upside. And I get this actually from a Twitter chain from my friend Larry Alex Taunton, whom I've had on the podcast before. And he goes, Tucker under the Murdoch regime was a guy with a little bit of a chain around him. Not that he had no latitude, but he had latitude to move within a certain confined space. And Larry gives two examples. He goes, number one, Tucker puts out a couple of clips from January 6th and then zip, no more. His other example, 2,000 Mules. He gave no coverage to 2,000 Mules. He goes, maybe he didn't want to, but Larry goes, nah, he probably did. He probably would have. He knew that this was in the news. It was something he should cover, but he got pressure from above. And I can testify that that really was the problem with Fox. Larry gives an interesting analogy. He says in 1519, Martin Luther, who was at that point still within the orbit of the Catholic Church, was invited to debate a papal representative, a fellow named Johann Eck, who was a kind of a very tough rhetorician. And Luther was a young academic. He was an Augustinian monk. And he thought, let me have a dialogue with this Eck guy. But Eck's goal was to label Luther as a heretic. And so in the debate, Eck basically asked Luther, what do you think of this guy, John Huss, H-U-S, who was, by the way, burned at the stake as a heretic? And Luther said, open-mindedly, well, I agree with some of the things he said. And Eck basically said, well, Luther, if you agree with Huss, and Huss is a heretic who was burned at the stake, you're a heretic who by implication should be burned at the stake. And this debate did not go well for Luther. In fact, he was very shaken. He was shocked, and he did not think, he thought he was making an objection to indulgences, but suddenly he's facing the charge of being a heretic. And so the idea is that Luther had a choice to make. He had to either stay within the fold and be confined in the way, you can see the analogy here to Tucker. Tucker is being held in by the papacy. The papacy here, of course, is the Murdoch regime, the Murdoch family. And or Luther had to say, enough, I'm out of here. I'm going to be my own man. I'm going to have to build my own. And of course, this was the movement we call the Protestant Church. Calvinism and the other forms of Protestantism came out of that. But I think what Larry's getting at is he's saying it was in some ways the liberation of Martin Luther. And then using the new technology of printing, Luther was off and running. Bibles were being printed all over Germany, and you had a powerful Protestant movement. And Larry's point regarding Tucker is that cable news is not the future. Cable news is declining. Even Fox on a good day has, 3, 4, at the most 5 million listeners. But then, says Larry, look at Joe Rogan. What does he have? 10 million on his podcast daily. Think of Rush Limbaugh, who had 15, 18, 19 million people. And so Larry's point is that there is an opportunity here for Tucker to move into the new media, into the new space where he might find himself, like Martin Luther, more free than ever.